You're listening to Why We Do What We Do. Welcome to Why We Do What We Do Mini. I'm your host, Abraham.
And I'm your host, Shane.
Mini episodes are these little short form episodes that we'll talk about a particular topic that only takes us like 15 minutes or less. And 3, 2, 1, go. What are we talking about, Shane?
Today we're talking about skin. So much skin.
Yes.
So if you're uncomfortable with skin, you can turn off this episode. But if you're not uncomfortable with skin, we're going to teach you how to talk about skin using very specific idioms from the English language.
So this is a follow-up to an episode we did on idioms. At the time, we had found several idioms related to skin by itself. We ended up not including them in that discussion. I think none of them, possibly one, but I don't think any of them. And so we are instead going to talk about those idioms now. And so the first one I'm going to tackle is thick-skinned. So if you've ever heard the expression being thick-skinned, this means essentially to be unperturbed by criticism or insults. So as an example sentence, if you're going to do work for which you are constantly being criticized, you're going to need thick skin.
Mm-hmm. Originally, it came from a record in Old English in the 1600s describing the rinds of fruits and vegetables with thick rinds, like bananas, oranges, and melons. By the 1500s, thick-skinned was used to describe a person as dull or unintelligent. So that's kind of an interesting shift, going to like being kind of like emotionally tough from being like dull or unintelligent.
Yeah. And then just as you said later, it came to mean someone who was insensitive to criticism or insult. So essentially that they would tolerate high levels of that and not be bothered by it. One source cited the Oxford English Dictionary as dating thick-skinned back to the late 1600s. I couldn't verify this, but that was one source that I found.
So the proposed rationale was that it meant that one's skin was too thick to easily pierce or damage. So if somebody was thick-skinned, you couldn't harm them very easily.
And obviously then the opposite of that is thin-skinned, which implies the opposite, that one is easily put off, like becoming irate when someone says Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. That would be thin-skinned.
I'm sorry, did you just make a dig at the veterans of the war on Christmas? How dare you?
You can't. Nobody can see me, but I'm just smiling.
Just grinning. That's my favorite thing that's come up is the war on Christmas. Get out of here. All right. So the next one that we're going to talk about is getting under my skin, under the skin, or into one's skin. And what that means is under the skin means to be irritated by something, right? So the example is these hypocrite talking heads are just getting under my skin.
Yep, exactly. Really could not pin down an origin for this one. I tried looking in a lot of different places and just couldn't find it. It seems to have been around for a while. Most suggest that it is an allusion to the fact that things that burrow into our skin or even just breaking skin is an irritating experience to us. And so that calling something as getting into under our skin would result in irritation. But I couldn't find anything else that specifically cited that.
So, under the skin means to reveal something deeply true. That is, something is covered by a presentation, a skin that misrepresents what is underneath. Getting under the skin suggests seeing past the artificial barrier. So that's kind of where it originally came from.
Yeah, an example of that is like, we learned what she was really like once we got under her skin. That one I don't feel like I've heard as often. Sorry, under the skin. Sorry, not her skin. Got under the skin.
Yeah.
And so getting under the skin of something, essentially, is revealing the true nature of it. Like I said, that's one I feel like I've heard less often, but that is a way that it has been used.
Yeah. And then there's the into one's skin, which means to put yourself into someone else's shoes. Like the example being, I thought I would be a good actor because I can really get into the skin of my characters. It's like perspective taking almost. Like I can get into somebody else's, I can see from somebody else's point of view.
Yep. So perfect. Getting under the skin, into one's skin, and under my skin.
Yep.
That word's starting to become decontextualized for me. Skin. All right.
Skin.
Let's talk about by the skin of my teeth.
This one gives me like a very visceral reaction because I'm like, ugh.
I kind of feel that.
I like it.
I'm like, ugh.
And it's like, no thanks.
Just imagining the skin.
Yeah. I don't want skin on my smile bones.
Indeed.
What this means is you're barely succeeding at something within the narrowest possible margin of error or by extreme luck. So the example would be, I was able to graduate just by the skin of my teeth.
An experience that some of us have had.
Yeah. Many of us even.
All right. Origins. There's a couple that are somewhat hotly contested, but one possible origin is Hebrew from the book of Job. That is, I'm going to butcher this, I'm sorry, but it's something like Bet or Sinai, which means with the skin of my teeth. However, many dispute this as an accurate translation. The Latin Vulgate instead suggested only my lips are left around my teeth as the translation for that. But so reading through these, I sort of synthesized various versions of the Bible. The passage essentially refers to Job being diseased and so emaciated that his head looked like a skeleton with skin.
Poor Job.
So all that was left was my skin and my teeth.
So basically, it ultimately came to mean a close call, barely surviving some ordeal or something like that. I'm just getting by. And that's essentially what it's led to, is like, in maybe some circumstances, like in Job's case, like I'm just getting by with the skin of my teeth because that's literally all I've got left. But it's kind of evolved into, this more narrow view of surviving a situation.
Yeah, barely surviving because of a disagreement.
Yes. So should we go into skinny?
Let's talk about skinny. Actually, let's fast so that we can be skinny and take a quick ad break. Two minutes later, so skinny.
So skinny.
This is obviously one that probably people have heard a lot, but it's actually interesting to think about why would we describe someone's physical feature as skinny? Like, why the words skinny?
Right.
What that means here, as I'm talking about, is when we call something skinny, we're essentially saying it's very thin. Usually a person's body or some creature's body, and that it means that they have very little noticeable body fat or relatively little. And that's what we usually mean when we say skinny.
Right. So an example would be he's so skinny that he looks like a skeleton, right? So like I think of specifically Sandman. If you go watch that show, the guy that plays Morpheus, very skinny.
Okay.
Like you can see like all of his muscles and ligaments and stuff when he is naked. So
or Christian Bale in The Mechanist when he actually fasted and starved himself to like drop a crazy amount of weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the origins kind of it's really interesting. Have we really thought about what a weird word this is, right? So one source suggested that it was first used to refer to thinness in Shakespeare's Macbeth. Quote, "You seem to understand me, by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips," end quote. So, for those of you who thought you were away from Shakespeare, there you go. We've got some here.
It's back. Another origin refers to the phrase beauty is only skin deep and eventually just turning into skinny as a reference to attractiveness.
Yeah.
There's one possible suggestion.
Yeah, and then according to the Mental Floss article, the Oxford English Dictionary references an early version that referred to the skin of youthful people and its attractiveness. So I would interpret this to suggest that skinny evolved from looking youthful, which is also generally thin or not fat. That's a common way to describe somebody who looks youthful.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're thin, they're youthful, they have nice skin, they are skinny, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
We're not just making this up. This is what people have said.
This is coming from sources. This is not our opinion on it.
Let's talk about skin in the game.
Oh, I actually really like this phrase.
Yeah. Even
though it's a skin one. So what it means is like you have a financial or an investment term, or to have stake in something, or to have a vested interest such that your commitment is trustworthy because you will lose something important if the investment fails. The game part of this is a metaphor referring to an enterprise or an endeavor of some sort, usually a business or some type of field of play.
Yeah. So for example, of using the skin in the game idiom, if you want to join our group, you have to put some real skin in the game. Might be a way to say it. There's quite a few possible origins to this one I found. One is related to the idea of self-preservation, sort of saving one's own skin, and so our skin being important in that way.
Yeah, another one is related to the use of skin as a euphemism for money, like skins, frog skins, toad skins, or golfers wagering skins against their playing. So skins was commonly used as like a specific money euphemism.
I saw a proposal that this was made popular by Warren Buffett to describe investors buying stock in a company in which they're running. So then they're actually motivated to ensure that a company runs well, because there might be reasons to otherwise not try and have a company run well, and then profit off of its demise. But if you have your own money invested in a company, then you would have, as he described, skin in the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's suggested that this came about as recently as the 60s or 70s, so 1960s, 1970s. It's a fairly new idiom and one that has been shaped up over the last couple decades. It's interesting that it's a fairly new one compared to some of the other ones that we just mentioned.
So that's a few skin idioms. We've got thick skin, getting under my skin, by the skin of my teeth, skinny, and skin in the game. But why though?
That's always the question, isn't it? So if we go back to our idioms episode, it is simply a way of communicating inside of a particular culture, fitting in. It's usually some common shared language. It's contextual a lot of times, at least when it started.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of gets passed on from generation to generation. And so now we end up kind of reusing these things that don't really have the same meaning that it would have many, many years ago.
But of course, there's a question, why skin? But I think that kind of also relates to why any of them, really, why any idiom. Skin is something ubiquitous with a particular quality of serving as an outer covering. So both metaphorically communicating something important about the skin wearer and obscuring the interior of the wearer.
Now, of course, skin is also simply part of everyone, but the part that we see the most. So its pigmentation has resulted in inhuman treatment of one another. So skin has become this forefront discussion. It is a part of us that is acutely noticeable when things go wrong. So especially too, when there's injuries, right? So we know when our skin is broken, things are going wrong. We got to keep our blood inside, not outside. If the blood's on the outside, we've got a real problem here.
Yeah, of course. And then this is not really news to anybody, but hey, we use our skin in a lot of ways, such as piercing it and putting metal through it. We tattoo it, we brand it, we scar it, sometimes on purpose, sometimes on accident. A lyric I've always liked from the band, The Receiving End of Sirens, is, quote, "I've dressed up this canvas skin, painted something beautiful."
Yeah.
End quote. I just always like that sort of a way of describing the decorating of one's own skin.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Now, generally, unless language gets in the way, most people enjoy skin-to-skin contact with one another, like high fives, hugs, handshakes, any other extracurriculars that go beyond that, which has also been associated with the release of hormones associated with bonding and feelings of love. So skin is a kind of important thing for us in many, many ways.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense that we would use that particular. I mean, we've used pretty much everything else as part of our idioms, so why not skin? It seems like it's right for the plucking.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I mean, it makes sense. It's an important part of our existing.
Yeah, it is the largest organ of our body. Lots of sensitive parts of skin with neurons connected to it that gives us the feels. So.
I don't know if you had this experience, but the first time I ever heard the word epidermis was from The Simpsons.
Oh yeah, that's right. Your epidermis
Homer's
is
about
showing.
Your epidermis is showing, and Bart falls and breaks his leg.
Yep, I think that was the first time I heard that as well.
Yeah, and that's the Alfred Hitchcock show where it's like the rear view, rear view episode where he's sitting, he's like, rear window. That's what it is. So great! What a great episode. Love The Simpsons. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, you have anything else on skin or skin idioms or skidioms?
Nope, I think I'm good on that one.
Okay, then I think that's all we have. This is Abraham.
And this is Shane.
Why We Do What We Do Mini is out.
See ya.
You've been listening to Why We Do What We Do. You can learn more about this and other episodes by going to www.wwdpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you have an awesome day.